I've always preferred the company of animals over people. After my dog, Max, passed away last year, the silence at home became unbearable. You know that feeling of emptiness that consumes you when you lose something that was part of your daily routine? That was me. For months, I tried to move on, but the truth is, only those who've had a pet understand the space they take in your heart. One of those lonely nights, scrolling through my phone before bed, I came across an ad on Craigslist. It was for a puppy of a breed I had never heard of, a Tibetan Key Apso. The text said it was rare, intelligent, great with kids, and that the owner just wanted to find a loving home. No money required, just proof you could provide a good environment. It seemed perfect, you know? Like the universe was trying to fill that void. I replied to the ad immediately. The person who posted it, someone named Jake, replied the same day. He was polite, straightforward, said he loved animals, and just wanted the best for the puppy. But there was something that gave me pause. He insisted on meeting at a public park, instead of letting me pick up the puppy at his house. It felt a little odd, but I convinced myself it was just caution on his part, you know? He mentioned how some people were untrustworthy and that he valued his privacy. A bit contradictory, but I didn't see any harm at the time. Besides, he sent me a picture of the puppy, and it melted my heart. The little guy was adorable, big brown eyes, floppy ears, and that clumsy charm only a puppy can have. On the agreed day, I arrived at the park a few minutes early. It was a quiet place, surrounded by tall trees, with wooden benches scattered across a well-kept lawn. The weather was nice, the sun timidly peeking through the clouds, and the sound of leaves rustling in the wind gave a false sense of peace. I was excited, but also nervous. What if it was a scam? Or worse, what if the puppy was sick or something? While I waited, I watched the people around me. There was a couple walking with a stroller, a guy jogging with headphones, and farther away, a black car parked near the park entrance. I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, but it seemed like someone inside was watching me. Jake showed up shortly after. He looked just like the photo from the Craigslist profile. Messy hair, a scruffy beard, and a slightly awkward smile. He carried a crate with the puppy inside. The dog was even cuter in person, but he was eerily quiet. No barking, no whining, just staring at me with those big eyes, almost as if he was as wary as I was. After a few minutes of small talk about the puppy, things like his diet and vaccine schedule, Jake's tone began to shift. He said, unfortunately, he'd had unexpected expenses with the puppy and asked if I could cover a small fee. That's when I started to feel uneasy. It wasn't about the money itself, but the fact that his story didn't add up. Before I could respond, I noticed him pressing me for more personal details. Where I lived, if I lived alone, if I had neighbors. It felt like he was trying to fill out a profile on me. While he talked, a sense of dread crept over me. Something about his posture, the insistence in his questions, was off. I tried to deflect, saying I lived with my sister, which wasn't true, but seemed safer to say. He chuckled nervously, looked away for a second, and muttered something like, "It's always good to have someone around." That's when I started piecing things together. My eyes darted to the black car at the park's entrance, the same one I had noticed earlier. Someone was still sitting inside, motionless, as if watching us. The puppy, who had been quiet until now, started shifting in the crate, letting out a soft whine, almost like a warning. My instincts were screaming that something was seriously wrong. I tried to end the conversation as casually as I could, saying I needed more time to think, and that I'd get back to him later. Jake, however, wasn't ready to let me leave so easily. He stepped closer, holding onto the side of the crate, and started speaking faster, almost desperate. "You don't understand. This dog needs a home now. I can't keep him. It's dangerous for me." The way he said it sent chills down my spine. It wasn't just about the puppy. He was glancing around, jittery, as if expecting something to happen any second. That's when I saw, out of the corner of my eye, the door of the black car slowly open. A tall figure stepped out, wearing a long coat, and began walking toward us. My heart pounded, and I knew I had to get out of there, but I couldn't make it obvious. With the figure approaching, each step slow and deliberate, I felt a surge of panic. My mind was racing. I thought about grabbing the puppy and running, but Jake was still holding the crate, and I knew he wouldn't just let me leave. The air felt heavier, as if the park itself had gone still. Even the birds had stopped chirping. "Look, I don't think this is going to work out," I said, trying to sound casual as I took a step back. But Jake leaned in closer, his awkward smile shifting into something more sinister. "Just answer the questions. It doesn't have to be difficult," he muttered, his voice low, almost a whisper. My head was spinning, searching for a way out. Suddenly the puppy began barking, a frantic, high-pitched sound that startled both of us. It was as if he sensed the same danger I did. Jake's face twitched with irritation as he slapped the side of the crate, trying to quiet the puppy. Meanwhile, the figure from the car was getting closer, and now I could see something in their hands. I couldn't tell what it was, but the sight of it sent alarm bells ringing in my head. I took a deep breath and said, as firmly as I could, "Just give me the dog. I'll take care of him. This ends here." Before Jake could respond, I yanked the crate out of his hands and turned to walk quickly in the opposite direction, my heart racing. The park, which had felt so peaceful earlier, now seemed endless. Every step I took felt heavier, and I could feel their eyes on me as I moved. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the figure in the long coat quicken their pace, their movements now deliberate and focused. My stomach dropped. I reached the parking lot, my car visible in the distance, but something felt off. The black car was gone. My mind raced. Had they moved it? Were they waiting somewhere else? My gut told me I wasn't alone. As I neared my car, I saw movement near the passenger side door, and my blood ran cold. Someone was crouched there, half hidden, as if waiting for me to get closer. Panic took over. I placed the crate on the ground, quickly opened it, and grabbed the puppy in my arms. His tiny body trembled against mine, his soft whimpers only making the moment more surreal. With my free hand, I fumbled with my keys, my fingers shaking so badly that I almost dropped them. I managed to unlock the door and throw myself into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut and locking it. Just as I started the engine, a loud bang startled me. The figure in the long coat had reached my car, slamming their hand against the passenger window. They were wearing a smooth black mask with no features, and the sight of it froze me in place for a second. Without thinking, I slammed my foot on the gas, jerking the car forward and nearly clipping another vehicle parked nearby. The masked figure didn't chase me but stood there watching, their head tilting slightly as I sped away. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. In the rearview mirror, I saw Jake running after me, shouting something I couldn't hear over the roar of the engine and my own panicked thoughts. But what really terrified me was the black car. Its headlights flared to life in the distance, and it started moving. They were following me. I drove aimlessly at first, taking random turns to try and lose them. The streets were nearly empty, and every set of headlights in my mirror felt like a threat. The puppy, still trembling in my lap, let out a soft whine. It was like he could sense my fear, or maybe he had been through this kind of chaos before. I finally spotted a construction site with a few abandoned buildings. Desperate, I veered into a side street, killed the headlights, and parked behind one of the structures. My chest was heaving, and I tried to listen for any sound of the black car. Minutes passed, and all I heard was the distant hum of crickets and the wind rustling through the empty lot. I thought I was safe, until I saw faint beams of light sweeping across the side of the building. I clutched the puppy tighter, holding my breath as the lights grew brighter. They were searching for me. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the lights moved away and the car drove off. I waited for what felt like an eternity before I dared to move. My hands were still trembling as I started the car and carefully drove back onto the main road. I took a roundabout route home, making sure I wasn't being followed. When I finally parked in front of my house, Relief washed over me, but only briefly. The entire night replayed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. I brought the puppy inside, locked every door and window, and sat on the floor with him in my lap. He had finally stopped trembling, his little body curled up against mine, as if he understood we were safe, for now. I spent the night staring out the window, my paranoia refusing to let me sleep. The black car, the masked figure, Jake's strange behavior, none of it made sense. The next day, I called the police, but without concrete evidence or a clear threat, they couldn't do much. Frustrated, I decided to take the puppy to a vet for a checkup. That's when things got even stranger. At the clinic, the vet scanned the puppy's microchip, a routine process, but her expression changed as she looked at the screen. "This chip isn't registered," she said, frowning. My stomach sank. I asked what that meant, and she explained that it was unusual as most chips are linked to breeders or shelters. This one wasn't. It was almost as if someone had implanted it outside the usual system. I left the clinic feeling uneasy, with more questions than answers. Later that day, I spent hours digging through online forums. I came across discussions about microchips being used for illegal purposes, and one story sent chills down my spine. Someone described adopting a puppy under strange circumstances, only to be tracked and harassed days later. Their situation sounded eerily similar to mine. Suddenly, it all clicked. The masked figure, Jake's persistence, the black car. What if they had been tracking me through the chip? I couldn't let it stay. I drove to another vet in a neighboring city and paid them to remove it. The vet hesitated but eventually agreed. When the chip was out, they noted something odd. This isn't just a regular ID chip. It's modified. There's something else inside it. I didn't stay to find out what. I took the chip, drove to a river, and tossed it in. Since that night, I haven't seen Jake or the black car. The puppy, who I named Lucky, has become my constant companion, bringing life and joy back into my home. But I still think about that night, about the strange events that unfolded, and the lingering questions I'll probably never answer. Who were those people? What did they really want? And why did it feel like Jake was just as much a victim as I was? I don't know, but one thing is clear. Lucky didn't just need saving that night. I think he might have saved me too. I've always been obsessed with old tools, especially those handmade vintage ones you just can't find anymore. So, when I saw that Craigslist ad, I was thrilled. The description was vague, something like vintage woodworking tools left by the previous owner, quick sale. But the pictures attached to the ad caught my attention. Saws with carved handles, hammers with brass details that looked like they belonged in a museum. The seller didn't give much information, just mentioned the tools were in a remote area outside of town and that I'd need to pick them up in person. It seemed odd, but not unusual. I'd dealt with people like that before. I messaged him, and he replied quickly, saying he could meet me at the address the next day. At the time, it didn't seem suspicious. I arrived in the late afternoon, driving down roads that felt like they led to nowhere, with open fields on one side and dense forests on the other. The place looked straight out of a movie, an old rural property, weathered by time. The main house leaned awkwardly, like the ground beneath it had given up, and there was a huge barn covered in moss, standing silent and empty. The seller was waiting near the barn. He seemed normal enough, but something about him made me uneasy. Maybe it was his smile, too wide and lacking warmth, like he was trying to be friendly but didn't quite know how. He greeted me and pointed toward the house. "The tools are in the attic," he said, sounding way too casual, like this was all perfectly normal. I hesitated for a moment, looking at the house. Every window was dark, and the peeling paint left the wood exposed, like scars. The roof sagged, and you could tell just by looking at it that the place was barely holding together. I tried to break the ice by asking if he lived there, but he just shook his head and laughed in a weird way. "No, I just handle the sales. The old owner, well, he's not around anymore," he said, glancing toward the barn like it was some kind of inside joke I didn't understand. I can't explain it, but the way he said it put me on edge. Still, I pressed on. I'd driven hours to get there after all. When I stepped into the house, the smell hit me first. It was a mix of rotting wood, dust, and something I couldn't quite place, but that reminded me of spoiled meat. The floor creaked with every step, and the rooms felt emptier than they should have. There were bits of furniture scattered around, all covered with yellowed, moldy sheets. The seller followed me inside, stopping at the doorway and leaning against the frame. "The attic's upstairs. Be careful with the stairs. They're not too sturdy," he said. But the way he stood there, blocking the door, sent a shiver down my spine. I tried to ignore it, but the discomfort kept growing. I was alone with a complete stranger in a place that felt like it could collapse at any moment, and he didn't seem the least bit concerned about helping me carry those tools out. I climbed the first steps, and the wood creaked so loudly it felt like it might snap under my weight. The staircase was narrow, covered in thick dust and cobwebs. Every step felt like I was trespassing somewhere I wasn't meant to be. "Are you sure the tools are up here?" I asked, glancing back at him over my shoulder. He didn't answer right away. He just stood there with that empty smile and finally said, "They're up there. You'll see." The way he said it, slow and deliberate, like he was holding back a secret, made me stop in my tracks. I'd been in weird situations before, but nothing like this. There was something about the silence between us that made the air feel heavy, almost suffocating. At the top of the stairs, I opened the attic door, but the darkness inside was almost impenetrable. I used my phone to light up the space and saw it was full of old stuff. Trunks, wooden scraps, and tools that looked exactly like the ones in the photos. But they were scattered, like someone had dumped them there without a second thought. At the same time, I felt like I was being watched, like something or someone was there with me, hidden in the shadows. "Hey, can you help me carry this stuff down?" I shouted, but the seller didn't respond. When I looked down, he was still standing by the door, but now he was staring at me with something I can only describe as impatience. It was like he was waiting for something or someone. The tension was unbearable. Something about the situation didn't add up. I was up there alone, and he just stood there, refusing to move, like blocking the exit was part of some plan I didn't understand. I decided to grab a couple of tools just to have an excuse to leave. As I bent down to pick up a rusty saw, I heard a sound, quiet, almost imperceptible, coming from the darkest corner of the attic. It was a noise that made me freeze in place, like I'd just stepped into a trap. It sounded like a whisper, or maybe the sound of something dragging itself. My flashlight shook as I aimed it toward the corner, but I didn't see anything, just darkness, dense and empty. I started down the stairs, moving quickly, clutching the saw and a hammer. "I found some things. That's enough for me," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice came out weak, almost a whisper. He didn't move, not an inch. He just stood there for a few seconds. Then, as if he'd decided something in his mind, smiled again. Only this time, the smile was worse, more wrong, like he was enjoying my fear. Without thinking, I gripped the saw tightly and rushed past him, my heart pounding. He tried to grab me, but I dodged and somehow managed to escape out the front door, my heart racing like it would explode. When I got to my car, I jumped in and slammed the door, my hands shaking as I tried to start the engine. The sound of the ignition seemed too loud, almost like a beacon calling out to whatever might still be in that house. Finally, the engine roared to life, and I backed out so fast I almost hit the fence at the edge of the property. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The seller was still there, but now he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a tall, indistinct figure, like it was made of the shadows themselves. They stood there watching me until they disappeared from view when I turned onto the main road. I drove for miles without stopping, trying to put as much distance as possible between myself and that house. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel, and I kept glancing in the rearview mirror every few seconds, half expecting to see something chasing me. When I finally reached the main road, I started to feel a little safer. I pulled into a gas station to catch my breath and try to process what had just happened. While leaning against my car, trying to steady my breathing, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The saw I had taken from the house was still on the passenger seat, but now it looked different. The blade, which had been clean before, was now covered in rust and what looked like dried blood. My first instinct was to throw it far away, but something stopped me. I picked up the saw carefully and examined the markings. They formed patterns, almost like symbols, simple yet ancient, like something you'd see in a ritual. My heart started pounding again, and an overwhelming sense of unease washed over me. How had this happened? I hadn't noticed anything strange while I was in the house, and now this was here, like it had changed during the drive. That's when I heard the noise. A faint clicking sound, like a nail tapping on glass, coming from inside the car. I turned around slowly to look at the back seat, and in that moment, it felt like the entire world stopped. There was a mark on the back window, a single straight line, like something or someone had scratched the glass from the inside. My body froze. I knew I'd driven alone, that there was no one else in the car with me. And yet, the weight of an unseen presence filled the air. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. But when I opened them again, another line slowly etched itself onto the glass, as if an invisible nail was carving it in real time. My heart raced, and I dropped the saw on the ground without caring if anyone saw. I jumped back into the driver's seat and twisted the ignition so hard I hurt my hand. As I sped away from the gas station, the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror again, but I could feel it. A heavy, oppressive presence sitting in the back seat. My mind scrambled for solutions. Should I stop the car and run? Should I throw the tools out and hope it would end? None of it seemed like it would work. The road ahead stretched endlessly, with darkness closing in around the car. Then the radio suddenly turned on by itself, static blasting loudly from the speakers. My mind was teetering on the edge when, through the static, I heard a voice, the seller's voice. "Did you think you could escape?" The voice made my stomach churn. It was low, almost a whisper, but clear enough to chill me to the bone. "You took something you shouldn't have." The words slid through the static, like the sound itself was alive, vibrating with malice. I twisted the radio's knob, trying to turn it off, but nothing worked. The sound kept going, growing louder and louder, until I had to cover my ears with my hands while still trying to drive. Then suddenly, everything went silent. The radio stopped, and the only sounds were the hum of the engine and my own ragged breathing. But the silence was worse. It was the kind of silence that makes you feel like something is about to happen. I glanced at the passenger seat where the saw had fallen, but it was gone. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I thought I might be losing my mind. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something in the back seat. A dark figure, indistinct, sitting there as if it had been waiting patiently all along. I slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a screeching halt in the middle of the road. Whipping around to look, I expected to see something. But the back seat was empty. My heart thundered in my chest, and I could barely catch my breath. Whatever was happening wasn't over. Something was toying with me, or worse, testing me. I knew I had to end it. The oppressive feeling of being watched, even in an empty space, was unbearable. I drove to a wooded area off the road, pulled over, and stepped out of the car. I searched for the saw frantically, looking everywhere in the back seat and on the ground. But it wasn't there. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. My mind raced in circles, desperate for answers, but none came. Then I noticed something. Marks on the ground, faint scratches leading from the side of the car into the forest. They were small, irregular, like claw marks. I knew I shouldn't, but I followed them. The trail led to a clearing, bathed in pale moonlight. In the center was a pile of old tools, arranged almost like an altar. At the top was the saw, its blade glinting with those strange, ritualistic markings. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. The air was heavy, and I felt a presence behind me. Slowly, I turned around. It was him, the seller. He stood at the edge of the clearing, his smile now even more distorted, as if it didn't belong to a human face. "You should have left it where it was," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally, reverberating through the clearing. That's when I realized this wasn't about the tools. It was about me. I tried to speak, but no words came out. He stepped closer, but it didn't feel like walking, more like the ground was pulling him forward. "You opened a door that should have stayed shut," he said calmly, his words cutting deeper than any scream. My legs felt rooted to the ground, and I couldn't move even as the shadows around us began to stir. They moved quickly, darting between the trees, closing in on the clearing. Suddenly, one of them brushed past me like an icy wind, and I fell to my knees, feeling as though I'd lost something, some part of myself. When I looked back up, the seller was even closer, his face no longer human. "Last chance," he said, and this time it wasn't an offer. It was a sentence. Desperate, I crawled to the pile of tools, my hands trembling as I reached for the saw. I placed it back on the pile, hoping it would end whatever nightmare I'd stumbled into. "There, I returned it. Let me go," I shouted, my voice cracking. For a moment, the air shifted. The tension eased slightly, and the shadows paused. The seller stepped back, and I thought it was over. But then he spoke again, and his words froze me in place. "It's not that simple. You've seen too much." The tools began to collapse into themselves, the pile falling apart as if pulled by an invisible force. A gust of wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing the moonlight, and the shadows surged forward again. When they finally receded, the seller was gone, and I was alone. I ran back to my car without looking back, jumped inside, and sped away into the night. Even now, years later, I can't fully explain what happened that night. But one thing is clear. That saw never should have left that house. Sometimes, I still feel a presence, like something followed me home. My advice? If you ever see an ad like that, do yourself a favor and ignore it. Once you step into that world, there's no way out. I was 21 at the time, in my second-to-last semester of college. I had just moved to a bigger city for an internship, and since my budget was tight, a bicycle seemed like the perfect way to save on transportation. I spent a few weeks searching, but all the good options were out of my price range. Then one night, while scrolling through online classifieds, I stumbled upon what looked like the deal of the year, a high-end mountain bike for less than half the price. The listing had just one blurry photo and a short description, but it was exactly the model I wanted. It felt too good to be true, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I messaged the seller right away. The guy responded quickly, almost as if he had been waiting for someone. He said the bike was in perfect condition, that he needed to sell it fast because he was moving, and that he was open to negotiation. The catch? He insisted we meet after 10 p.m. in a parking lot at an industrial park on the outskirts of the city. I hesitated, of course. It was a strange location and a strange time, but he played the "there are other buyers" card and said he couldn't hold it for long. My eagerness to close the deal got the better of me. I agreed to meet him that same night. Before leaving, I shared the location with a friend and joked, "If I don't come back, the bike guy kidnapped me." I laughed at the time, but that uneasy feeling in my gut didn't go away. I arrived at the location about 15 minutes early, still trying to convince myself I was overreacting. The industrial park was massive, with several warehouses and poorly lit streets. During the day, it was probably bustling, but at that hour, it was completely deserted. The only sounds were the wind brushing against the metal structures and the echo of my footsteps on the asphalt. I parked my car near a flickering streetlight and waited. About 10 minutes later, a white van pulled into the lot. It stopped about 30 yards from me, idling for a moment before shutting off its engine. The guy got out. He looked normal, worn jeans, a dark jacket, and a baseball cap, but something about him put me on edge. Maybe it was the way he scanned the area before walking toward me, like he was making sure we were alone. He opened the back doors of the van, and that's when I noticed something that made the whole situation even stranger. Inside the vehicle were at least 5 or 6 bikes, all different models, stacked carelessly on top of each other. Some still had chains and locks attached, as if they'd been ripped right off their racks. "This one's yours," he said, pulling out a mountain bike that matched the listing. But I couldn't stop staring at the other bikes. Something didn't add up. I casually asked if he owned a shop or something, but he just gave a quick, dismissive smile and said he had a side hustle. My throat went dry, and the thought that these bikes might be stolen weighed on my mind. Still, I decided to act normal. I just wanted to pay, grab the bike, and get out of there as quickly as possible. As he pulled the bike out of the van, I noticed something that made my stomach churn. In the back of the van, partially covered by a black tarp, were heavy chains and several loose padlocks. Not something you'd expect from someone just selling bikes. He caught me staring and froze for a moment, then flashed a weird smile. "It's for security," he said, gesturing toward the chains. "Keeps things from rolling around back there." The way he said it didn't convince me. I started sweating, feeling an overwhelming urge to come up with an excuse to leave. But he was already holding the bike toward me, almost like he was blocking my path to the car. "Want to take it for a spin? Test it out?" he asked, sounding like a regular salesman. I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady, and said I didn't need to test it, that I just wanted to pay and leave. He shrugged, but instead of taking the cash I had ready, he started talking about the bike's technical details. It felt like he was stalling. My heart started pounding. I tried to appear calm, but my mind was screaming that something was very wrong. Then I heard it. A faint sound behind me. A dry click, like a car door closing coming from the shadows. My body tensed. The man turned his head toward the noise, then back to me, his expression no longer friendly. My first instinct was to turn around and look, but something stopped me. It felt like I just knew that turning my back would be a mistake. "Did you bring someone with you?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice came out shaky. He just shook his head slowly, that strange smile still fixed on his face. "No, it's just me. Maybe someone's here grabbing something from one of the warehouses," he said, but his calm tone didn't match the tension I felt in the air. I tried to glance discreetly over my shoulder, but the darkness seemed thicker than before. The noise had definitely come from close by. I was sure of that. My mind raced, searching for explanations, but none of them made me feel safe. "You know what?" I said, trying to sound decisive. "I think I'll keep looking at other listings. This bike is great, but it's not quite what I'm looking for." I took a step back, hoping to create some distance. His smile faded. "You came all the way out here for this?" "You're wasting my time," he said, his voice colder now, almost irritated. The unease that had been building inside me exploded into full-blown panic. He took a step toward me, still holding the bike, and at that moment, I knew I had to leave, even if it meant running. That's when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move between 2 warehouses. It wasn't just someone walking. It was low, fast, almost like it was slinking. My body went into autopilot. Without thinking, I turned and walked quickly back to my car. I didn't run. It felt like running would provoke him. But every step felt heavier, like the asphalt was pulling me down. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Not his. They were lighter, faster, like someone running barefoot. My blood froze. I couldn't bring myself to look back. I reached the car and fumbled with my keys, dropping them in my panic. "Damn it!" I whispered, crouching to pick them up. That's when I felt it, a presence, so close it was suffocating. I grabbed the keys, stood up, and glanced toward the van. The man was standing there, but he wasn't alone anymore. A hunched figure, low to the ground with unnaturally long limbs, was creeping along the side of the van like a shadow that didn't belong. I jumped into the car and locked the doors, my hands trembling so badly that it took 2 tries to start the engine. When it finally roared to life, the creature was close enough for me to hear its labored, uneven breathing. I didn't hesitate. I slammed the gas pedal, tires screeching as I sped out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, I saw the man standing there, calmly waving like he knew I'd come back. The creature crouched next to him, its long limbs dragging on the ground like it was sniffing for something. My vision blurred with tears of fear, but I kept driving until I reached a well-lit street with people around. I pulled over, my heart racing, and sat there for what felt like hours, trying to calm down. The unsettling feeling stayed with me for days. At night, I started hearing noises outside my apartment, soft footsteps or scratching at the walls. One night, when I finally worked up the courage to peek through the curtain, I swear I saw that same hunched figure standing across the street, motionless. I flipped on the lights, but when I looked again, it was gone. It was like whatever had been in that parking lot had followed me home. I barely slept, jumping at every sound, convinced I was being watched. Things escalated when I found deep scratch marks on my front door, like someone, or something, had clawed at the wood. I put on extra locks and checked the building's security cameras, but nothing ever showed up. I was losing my mind. The final straw came when I woke up to a loud crash in my kitchen. I grabbed a knife and went to check, finding the window open even though I was sure I had locked it. On the floor beneath the window was a small piece of chain, just like the ones I'd seen in the van. That was it. I packed my things and moved out the next day with help from friends. I vowed never to do anything so impulsive again. Since I moved, things have been quiet, but I've never truly felt safe. I still glance over my shoulder, especially at night. I never saw that man or the creature again, but they haunt my dreams. I'll never know what really happened that night or what their plan was. Sharing this story here is my way of warning others. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I just hope no one else falls into the same trap, and that those who do are as lucky as I was to get away. I was 22 at the time, studying psychology in the mornings and working part-time as a barista. But with my college tuition piling up and my shifts at the cafe barely covering expenses, I started looking for another job. I came across a simple online ad. Babysitter needed, $20 per hour. It didn't give much detail, but it seemed perfect for me. The schedule was flexible, and the homeowner assured me I'd only need to help with light tasks while the baby slept. Her voice on the phone was calm, almost sweet, and she seemed desperate to find someone quickly. Since the address wasn't far, I accepted the job without a second thought. I arrived at the house on a Friday afternoon. It was a big, old house, the kind with peeling white paint and wooden-framed windows. The curtains were drawn, giving the place a stuffy, closed-off vibe, but I figured it was just poor upkeep. The homeowner opened the door with a smile. She looked about 60, with gray hair tied in a messy bun and round glasses that gave her a grandmotherly appearance. But something about her didn't sit right. The smile didn't reach her eyes, and her posture was too stiff. Still, I stepped inside. She called me sweetie and began showing me around. That's when I started noticing things that didn't add up. The first thing that unsettled me was the silence. The house was huge, but it was eerily quiet. No baby crying, no sound of toys, nothing. The walls were too clean, no photos or anything that made the place feel like a home. When she took me to the living room, I noticed something else. There weren't any baby items in sight. No crib, no toys, no bottles. I thought it was strange, but tried to brush it off. Maybe the baby was in another room, or maybe she was just super tidy and didn't like clutter. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The woman kept talking nonstop, as if trying to distract me, but I was becoming more focused on the details. She led me to the kitchen and asked me to wash some dishes while she checked on the baby. That's when I realized something else strange. My bag, with my phone in it, was still near the front door. I asked if I could grab it, but she insisted, in a tone colder than before, that I finish what I was doing first. The uneasy feeling started to grow, but I didn't want to come across as rude, so I did as she asked. After a few minutes, she returned, but she didn't mention the baby. Instead, she started showing me other rooms one by one. Most of the bedrooms were empty, with furniture covered in sheets as if no one had lived there for years. Every door I opened felt like it was inviting my discomfort. And when we reached the hallway at the back, I noticed something that made my heart race. One of the doors was locked. I couldn't help myself. Curiosity made me ask, "What's in there?" The woman hesitated for a moment, but quickly forced a smile and said it was just a storage room with old junk, nothing interesting. She rushed me along, but something about that door left me suspicious. It was a heavy door, different from the others, with scratch marks near the bottom, as if something or someone had tried to get out. My stomach churned, but I kept following her, trying not to show my unease. The last thing I wanted was to seem paranoid or ungrateful, but deep down, I knew something was very wrong. When the tour ended, she left me alone in the living room, saying she'd be back in a few minutes. I took the chance to grab my bag and check my phone. That's when I noticed something even stranger. The signal was gone. No bars, nothing. No Wi-Fi, no service. I started walking around the house, trying to find a signal, but it was useless. When I looked out the front window, I noticed her car was no longer in the driveway. She had left without telling me. The discomfort turned into full-blown panic. My instincts told me to leave immediately, but something made me hesitate. Maybe it was the thought of not wanting to seem ungrateful. Maybe it was the curiosity growing stronger by the second. But mostly, it was that locked door. I needed to know what was inside. After a few minutes of pacing around and trying to stay calm, I decided I couldn't ignore that door anymore. I grabbed my bag and went back to the hallway. I didn't have any excuse to be snooping around, but my curiosity was stronger than my fear. I tested the doorknob just to confirm it was locked, and it was. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in the silence of the house. That's when I noticed something. There was a key hanging on a hook near the door. I hadn't seen it before, or maybe I'd been too distracted trying to act normal in front of her. With trembling hands, I grabbed the key and inserted it into the lock. When the door finally opened, the smell hit me first. It was heavy, sour, and made my stomach churn. I flipped on the light, and to my horror, the storage room was nothing of the sort. It was a small, cramped space with old mattresses scattered on the floor and what looked like a steel cabinet in the corner, wrapped in chains. The walls were scratched, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. My body froze, but my mind was racing. What kind of place was this? And, more importantly, why had she lied about the baby? That's when I heard a noise. A soft click coming from the front of the house. The front door had been locked. The sound of the door locking made my throat go dry. I ran down the hallway back to the living room, trying not to make any noise. When I looked out the window, there she was, standing on the porch, staring inside. But now, that fake smile was gone. Instead, her eyes were cold and calculating. She raised her hand, showing me the key to the front door, and slipped it into her pocket, as if to make it clear that I wasn't going anywhere. My heart was racing, and I started thinking of every way I could escape, but nothing seemed possible. The house was old and full of locks, and my phone was useless with no signal. I tried to stay calm. I decided my only way out was to confront her directly. I opened the door to the living room that led to the hallway and asked, in the firmest voice I could muster, "What's going on here?" She stared at me for a few seconds, silent, before finally responding. "You shouldn't have gone where you weren't supposed to, sweetie." The way she said sweetie this time was almost venomous. A chill ran down my spine. Without another word, she stepped inside, locking the door behind her. I was trapped, with no idea what to do, but I knew one thing. I needed to get out before something worse happened. I backed away as she slowly advanced, her eyes fixed on me like she already knew I had no way out. "What do you want from me?" I asked, trying not to let the panic seep into my voice. She stopped in the middle of the room, tilted her head slightly, and answered with an unsettling calm. "You ruined everything. Now we'll have to fix it another way." Her words echoed in my head, and that's when I saw what she was holding. A kitchen knife, small but sharp. My instincts screamed at me not to stick around to find out what she meant by "fix it." I bolted down the hallway, aiming for the back door, but the hallway seemed longer than before, like it was stretching. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. I finally reached the back door, but it was locked too. I yanked on the handle desperately, trying to force it open as I heard her footsteps coming closer. Each step was slow, deliberate, the sound of her shoes on the wooden floor hammering in my ears. I needed a plan, fast. Then I remembered the window in the kitchen. It might be my only shot. Without a second thought, I ran to the kitchen. My body was acting on pure instinct, as if my brain knew every second mattered. The window was small, but it looked wide enough for me to squeeze through. I pulled on the latch, but it was stuck. I was on the verge of a full-blown panic attack when I heard her voice from the hallway. "It's no use. You're not getting out." The calm in her voice was even more terrifying than if she had shouted. It was like she already knew she had won. Ignoring her, I used all my strength to force the window. After a few tries, the latch finally gave, and I managed to push it open. As I was about to climb onto the sink and escape through the window, I heard a heavy noise behind me. When I turned, there she was, standing in the kitchen doorway, clutching the knife so tightly her knuckles were white. "You ruined everything," she said, her voice more frustrated than angry. A shiver ran down my spine, but adrenaline took over. Without thinking, I grabbed the first thing I could find on the counter, a cast iron pan, and held it in my trembling hands. "Stay away from me," I shouted, and for the first time, she hesitated. That was my chance. In one quick motion, I threw the pan at her and turned to climb out the window. The pan hit her on the side, making her stumble for a moment, but it was enough time for me to climb out of the window. My body was so full of adrenaline, I didn't even feel the glass scratching my leg as I crawled over the ledge and landed on the dirt outside. As soon as I hit the ground, I heard heavy footsteps coming from inside the house. She was coming after me. There was no time to think. I ran as fast as I could, not even looking back, darting across the dark yard and into the forest that surrounded the house. The trees were so close together it was hard to move, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I ran until my legs couldn't carry me anymore, tripping over roots and branches that seemed to grab at me. Finally, I saw something in the distance that looked like a road. My hope surged, and I pushed myself forward, feeling the cold wind sting my face. When I reached the road, I turned to look back, but I didn't see her. The house was no longer in sight, but I still felt like I was being watched. Without hesitation, I started walking along the road, hoping to find a car or a house. After about 10 minutes, I saw headlights in the distance. It was a truck. I jumped into the middle of the road, waving frantically. The driver slammed on the brakes, rolled down the window, and asked what was going on. My words came out shaky, but I managed to explain the basics. He helped me into the cab and took me to the nearest police station. At the station, the officers listened to my story with mixed expressions of disbelief and concern. I was shaking, my clothes torn and covered in dirt, but I managed to recount everything. When I mentioned the locked room and what I saw inside, one of the officers' faces grew more serious. They promised to investigate and drove me home after filing the report. I didn't sleep that night, replaying every detail in my mind, trying to make sense of what had happened. Who was that woman? Why had she lured me to that house? And most importantly, what was in that chained cabinet? 2 days later, I got a call from the sheriff. They had gone to the house, but the woman was gone. The house was completely empty, with no furniture or signs that anyone had lived there recently. What gave me chills was what he said next. "We found the room you mentioned, but the cabinet, it was empty. The chains were on the floor, broken." To this day, I don't know what really happened in that house, but I do know one thing. I'll never answer a job ad without thoroughly checking the details again. Sometimes, curiosity can lead you into dangers you can't even imagine.